sports for more.
Hey, welcome back to The Question, a Blog Talk Radio conversation. Me, Doug Pagitt, your host, weekday mornings from 10 until 11. Also streaming on Ustream live and also recording the video over on Ustream. Lots of ways you can listen to this show. It is a conversation between me, a guest host in the second half of the show, and you, the listeners, the chatters, and the callers. Hey, a couple of things going on in the news before we talk to Steve Scherber in the second half. As I promised you, a few things going on legally. I have 5 stories that have to do with the law. Here's a headline that wouldn't normally grab my attention, but you get in a little deeper and it's quite interesting. 4 people were charged in connection with marijuana growing operation in northern Minnesota. Now, what I found interesting about this, not so much that people are growing marijuana and they're selling it for their purposes and all this, but that 4 people were charged on Tuesday with running this operation, and 2 of them were in their 60s. A 67-year-old man and a 62-year-old woman in Arago Township in just north of Park Rapids, where their pot growing operation was based. And according to the criminal complaint filed in Huber County, they were convicted of drug trafficking in 2002. Now they're growing it and selling it again. And apparently over there at their little shop, they had all kinds of things going on. They found 97 marijuana plants in several rooms and outbuildings, several bags of pot exceeding 10 kilograms. And another building in the property had 402 marijuana seedlings. And they also found drug paraphernalia and a sawed-off shotgun. 67-year-old man, 62-year-old woman. I guess for some reason I thought that people would outgrow their pot stupidity. But now I think, why did I think such a thing? That's foolhardy. I mean, these people have been smoking dope, I'm guessing, for a number of years. It just, I imagine 67-year-old men and 62-year-old woman, looking at their Social Security check, that they've sort of moved on. But no, they haven't moved on from their drug selling operation. They've stepped it up. 97 plants, 402 seedlings. They got it going on. Well, a good thing that didn't happen over in Minnetonka. Minnetonka is a western suburb of Minneapolis, and they've got an interesting thing going on now. They've passed a new law, which is one that's very similar to about a dozen other cities in Minnesota. It is a law that would allow prosecutors to bring charges against parents if their house is used for underage drinking, that the parents can be charged. The big deal is that Minnetonka is changing the language of their law from what many cities in the state have, which are that adults who host gatherings and know or reasonably should know that minors are drinking could be arrested. Not just fined, but arrested. Well, what Minnetonka has said, they would prosecute adults whose gatherings took place in their house where conditions were ripe for underage drinking to take place. Now, that kind of ratchets it up a little bit, right? It's not just did you know and should you have known and when did you know, but were the conditions apropos for underage drinking? It's interesting, right? Like your own home, if you create an environment that teenagers could drink in, your teenagers, or I'm assuming preferably or presumably other people's teenagers could drink in, that you could be held criminally responsible. It's interesting. I wonder what you all think about that. If you think that that's a reasonable way to put a law together, if it's reasonable for a person to be held criminally liable just for having the conditions that are ripe for such behavior. Steve Scherber has entered the lair. Steve Scherber is in the house. Steve Scherber is our co-host for the second half of the show, so he's here. I wonder what Steve would think about this. Steve, covering a little topic here out there in Minnetonka. They're passing a law, or proposing to pass a law, that would hold parents criminally responsible.
We can stop right there. That's perfect.
Good enough, right? Criminally responsible for anything their stupid kid does. No. In this case, it is they'd be held criminally responsible if they were to host gatherings where conditions were ripe for underage drinking. I'm assuming the underage drinking had to have happened, as opposed to they could have, right? Like, so if they created an environment where, kids drink and it was like, oh, totally, this was a big setup and the parents should have known, or it was ripe for them, or it was, that the parents would be held criminally responsible. Doesn't that seem a little hard to wrap your head around?
It doesn't seem like a new law, though. Like, the idea that if somebody, I mean, I think in that law, the crux is, how do you prove what is ripe?
Yeah.
Because right now, what I understand, I don't know how the law necessarily works in this arena, but if some kid was killed in a car accident and was drinking at a party, and they found that party was occupied by the parent of the owner of the house, or whatever, that there could be criminal charges, there could be civil charges.
Could there be criminal or just civil charges? Do you know?
Well,
I think that might be the difference, is that you could be held negligent.
Both. Yeah, you could do both, but in order to have criminal charges, you have to have a plaintiff, and then there's sort of a proving of the case, right? So one person is going to say, we want that person to be held criminally responsible. Our son is dead.
So you think that a parent, in that case, that a parent of a home where kids were drinking and maybe they, knew about it or sort of allowed for it, that they could be held criminally, not just civilly responsible, but criminally responsible? That's what I don't know.
I think they can.
You think they can?
I mean, I think it's against the law to give alcohol to a minor.
Yes.
And I'm pretty sure that if you, like, for instance, I know one of the laws that I do know exists is if in a bar, you serve one of your patrons, and they are obviously intoxicated, and they go out and kill somebody, the bar can be responsible.
Yeah, I think that's true for bars, because they take on a certain license. But I think what Minnetonka is doing, along with 12 others, is they're now creating this law that you would be criminally responsible.
That would be a good piece to know, because I just assumed that if you supply alcohol to a minor and they commit some sort of crime, that you can be held responsible.
Well, I think that's true. I think it's true if you supply it. I think what they're getting at is it happens at your house. You go out for the evening, your kid throws a party, it happens at your house, whether you're there or not.
Whether you're there or not.
Oh, yeah. It's not just you're giving it to them. It goes on at your house.
See, I think.
And in some cities they have laws. Okay. See, I'm just thinking. I
didn't understand that.
Yeah.
I thought you were saying, like, hey, we were downstairs watching TV. We didn't know our kids were upstairs drinking.
Yeah, well, that could be it too. But
if you're like, we're going out of the house, they're watching, don't do anything dumb, and you're leaving your stupid kids do something dumb. Hey, man, that's.
Yeah, this is the big.
My kid,
This is. I mean, I made him, but I didn't think he was going to turn out like me. So that's a big issue here in the law coverage of today's show. The third story in the law has to do with Bruce Springsteen. Now I had a good time with him the other night. And
you see him like a dozen times a year?
No, I see him once a year, maybe twice some years.
That's the beginning of this year already.
Yeah, it's May. Every May I make a pilgrimage, and I'm rebalanced. But anyway, here's what happened when I tried to buy my Bruce Springsteen tickets for this concert back in the winter. And the listeners and viewers of the show, they know this, because I was in the Dallas airport trying to buy the tickets while I was running the show, and Ticketmaster said, I'm there, my computer clock hadn't turned to 10:01 yet. And it comes up and says, all the tickets are already gone. You have to go to Tickets Now to buy tickets. And they're 3 times the price. Tickets Now is a subsidiary of Ticketmaster. They just they just moved all the tickets over there and said you have to go buy them over there now. And everybody went berserk. Bruce Springsteen went crazy. So Minnesota passed a law that they can't do that now. ticket. If you're going to be a ticket seller, you have to actually. You can't sell the tickets that you possess from the Excel Center or for any event. You can't sell them to your own subsidiary, who then sells them for a higher price. I mean, Ticketmaster, they're such criminals. I mean, they're like bankers. They're like bankers, lawyers, and clergy. I'm telling you. Hey, if you're listening on Blog Talk Radio, just hang with us. Just keep it rolling. If you are watching on Ustream, you don't have to do anything about that. But if you're watching on the Ustream video, then you're going to have to go to the next video, because this one's going to end in just a second here during the news, which is brought to you by